Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our panel today featuring and spotlighting the importance of this National Day, National Girls and Women in Sports Day. We're thrilled with our folks who are joining us today to have a robust and interesting conversation with you. And I'm Allison Barber. I'm the president of the Indiana Fever. This is a special day for us because it's days like today and all of the work that's come before us that allows us to have this wonderful professional women's basketball team right here in Indiana. We'll learn more about that today, I'm sure, through this panel. But gosh, I couldn't be more proud and humbled to introduce you to our MC, Beairshelle. Thank you for joining us. And an Emmy Award-winning broadcaster with Fox 59. The work you're doing in our city and beyond is really important and great. We're thrilled to have you on the call today as our MC. Thank you for sharing your time. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Allison. I am thrilled as well just to be here and to be among so many women who are doing great things, both in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. And I'm a huge advocate. I never could quite master my athletic ability and height, but it pleases me knowing just a little bit of me is still in the sports world. So thank you so much for having me as your mistress of ceremonies today. So we want to get started here by introducing our esteemed panel, and I'll tell you a little bit about each one of them. First, we have Mel Reigns, who is the president and chief operations officer of Pacer Sports and Entertainment. And I'd like to give Mel the floor here to introduce herself and talk a bit about what she does. Mel?
Thank you, and thanks for having me here today. I am native of South Bend, Indiana. Went to Indiana University in Bloomington, and then spent the first 20 years of my career actually in politics and government affairs and planning Republican conventions, and moved back home in 2009 to work on the Super Bowl host committee, where I met Susan Baughman, who's I think our next panelist, and probably many of the people who maybe are on the phone today, Allison Barber included. And after the Super Bowl, I was offered an amazing opportunity here with Pacers, and I started 7 years ago. Started out running our facilities, and then that role has grown to add a few other functions: communications, community engagement, HR, IT, our construction renovation that we're undergoing right now. And I'm also the president of the 2024 NBA All-Star Host Committee. So happy to be with you here today.
And I know so many of us are excited to see 2024 after COVID put some pauses on that All-Star game. So many great accolades there. Let me move on to the next lady here, Danita Johnson. She'll be joining us in just a little bit. She is the president of business operations for DC United. As well, we do have one of the ladies you just heard mentioned there, Susan Bauman. She is the president of 2022 Indy College Football Playoff, which really just wrapped up here weeks ago. So Susan, I'll give you the floor. Give us a little introduction about what you do and your ties here to Indiana.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having me here today. I grew up in Indiana, and I went to school also at Indiana University in Bloomington. Since then, I have worked in sports sort of without the intention to do so. I fell into it when I graduated. My first job was with a host committee, a local organizing committee for the 1991 World Gymnastics Championships. And I loved it so much, I stayed involved doing different host committee events and eventually working for Indiana Sports Corp for about 23 years, both working on event planning and bidding. And then just recently in 2017, moved over to run the 2022 College Football National Championship, which was great, but also a host committee. So I've popped around in the world of sports, but really love working within the community to see how sports can create a better community for everybody who lives here.
All right, ladies, thanks for those introductions. I'm going to dive straight into the questions because that's what so many people are here for, to get the answers and insight from you all. The first question I want to talk about here is, why is it important to see women like yourselves in leadership positions in sports? And I'll start first with Susan.
Yeah, I think the importance of seeing people who are more like you just gives you the inspiration that you also have the opportunity to achieve in the world of sports, which for a long time I think was considered to be kind of the man's world, right? So whether that was in the venue area, running events, coaching teams, I think it really opened the door to see women get involved at all levels of the sports industry. And so I think that it's important to see that, just because we want to bring a broader perspective to management of the sports industry. And seeing those role models ahead of us really show you that you can do that if that's your interest area.
Mel, for you, what's the importance here of seeing women in those chairs at the head of the table?
Yeah, I didn't realize until I got here 7 years ago, how important it really is. So when I first started overseeing, starting with the field house, I was the third woman out of 29 NBA buildings to hold that position, which is shocking to me. And now we've gotten up to 6, and I think we're back down to 4 women, but that's not, that's not nearly enough. And so if you're in that world, in one of those 29 teams, you don't have a whole lot of people to look up to that look like you. I don't know that you aspire to do it. I think I'm so proud to be a member of Pacer Sports Entertainment with the Indiana Fever, because if the only professional athletes we were working to support were male, I think that's also not ideal. And so having a women's professional team that plays in our building, that is an important part of our company, I think is equally important. We, not only should be in the front office, but having the athletes also be female, I think is great for women to see. When I played until my junior year in high school, and they gladly asked me to leave the basketball team at that point. But I would never have had the opportunity to play I would have been done in college had I gone on. And so just knowing that you can aspire to be the president of an NBA team, the president of the college football playoff, which, there have not been many women that have done that, or in MLS, I know our other panelists, there are very few women that have done that. I think all of those are really important. And I look forward to the day when it's not news, when that happens, because it's the normal course of business.
You touched on something that I want to circle back here. Because you don't get to see so many of these women in these positions, who influenced you all to say, hey, I should be in this space. This is something I can achieve. Mel, why don't you take that first?
Sure. I have been lucky my whole career since I started having women in pretty senior positions everywhere I worked along the way. And, that was important to see them. I thought they were old at the time, and they're younger than I am now. So that's also a sad note. But when I moved into sports in 2009, the head of the host committee for the Super Bowl was Allison Barber, who's now with IMS and is a dear friend of Susan and mine. And so my first boss in sports was female, and that was a great example. But I think it's we've all had male and female mentors, and I think it's equally important to have men advocating for you when there aren't a lot of women in the room, as it is to have women to look up to. I mean, it takes a village to get up to the place where we are today. And I've been lucky enough to have both.
Susan, are there any mentors or influences in common with Mel, or those that stand out to you about your journey?
I feel the same. I would echo Mel in saying that we've had some great female role leaders in Indianapolis, which is where we're working from, which has sort of made you think, okay, these things are possible. So Allison Barber, who did run the Super Bowl, I had also worked with in a previous job, and she held a leadership role at USA Gymnastics for a very long time. And I remember when I first started, just being so impressed by not only her knowledge of the sport, but really her dealing with all kinds of people. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that's really the key. If you can work with all kinds of people, gender aside, right, this is going to be a key to success. And along the same lines, I had met Sandy Knapp very early on. She was the first female leader of a sports commission, and Indianapolis has the Indiana Sports Corp, which is the first sports commission nationally that was created. And so I had, the opportunity to work in my first job with these two women who I saw to be very knowledgeable, very powerful, but more importantly, able to make these connections, whether it was men, women, business people, people in sports. And so I think seeing that that's an opportunity in your own city is really important. And hopefully people seeing Mel and I, like she said, now that we're in these jobs and we're probably older than those who came before us, it's inspiring. And I think that hopefully us getting attention, being able to speak at forums like this shows these jobs are available. And I think that's the other key. A lot of people don't know these jobs in sports are available to a normal person going through a normal school and a normal college that doesn't have special connections. So I think these are really great panels to make this awareness grow.
Well, speaking of seeing people and seeing representation and knowing that you can do these roles, I want to introduce our third panelist who's joining us now. Danita Johnson is joining us. And Danita, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and talk a bit about your journey, your education, as well as your background.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much and appreciate it. It is a busy day over here at DC United. So thank you. And I apologize for my tardiness. But my name is Anita Johnson. I serve as the president of business operations for DC United. I'm actually this is like my 1-year anniversary this week, I believe, of joining the club. And super excited. And to my friends of the WNBA, I've spent the last few years prior to this in the WNBA. I used to be the president and COO for the LA Sparks. And so such a pleasure to be here. From a background standpoint, I've spent over 15 years in the industry, mainly all in basketball. And now I'm in the world of soccer. I'm originally from North Carolina, a graduate from Western Carolina University, and so proud to be here today. So thank you for having me.
Danita, thanks for joining us. I'll throw you one of the first questions that we have submitted here. And I want everyone that's watching to know that if you want to submit a question and you didn't get the chance to do so beforehand, we're going to use a function toward the end of this panel in the chat where you can ask those questions. So please keep them here, listen, engage in this conversation, and then we'll circle back for your questions as well. So let me start first with Claire Shepper. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Claire's question is, how did you maintain or gain confidence in yourself as you grinded to the top? And let me start with Danita for that first answer.
Yeah, I think for me, it was day by day, right? I think confidence and like your ability to like step in a room and own that space comes over time. And so, you know, having those moments when I had to like, whether it was standing up for myself or, you know, overcoming a new challenge and all of those moments where you see a little bit of success. And even when I would have some failures, it helped to build confidence in me. One, to know that I could fall and get back up again. Two, know that I had opportunities to strive forward in what I was doing, that I could really be a game changer and help set new standards and try new things. So between those, that's really what helped me kind of gain my confidence. I still have unconfident moments at times. It's part of life because we're always evolving. We're always in new challenges. And when we go into new spaces, we're often challenged in new ways that test our own confidence. But to know that you can keep pushing forward is really important.
Mel, what about you? What keeps you confident and makes you feel strong as you rise to the top?
Yeah, I agree with what Danita just said. Sometimes it's hour by hour, not even day by day. But for me, I think the key has always been to be over prepared. So I typically, when I go into a room, I'm usually more, I try to be more prepared than everybody else. And that's just hard work and sort of grinding it out. But if I'm confident in what I'm presenting in that meeting, or I'm the subject matter expert on, then you know, that helps. I think every job, every position you learn and grow from along the way. And I think that's, you know, that helps too. Just sometimes when you get to 30 years of experience and you have had a lot of things happen that you've learned from, usually that means something bad happened and you're not going to let it happen again. That's just with, you know, age and wisdom sometimes.
Susan, how about for you?
I would say the feeling of confidence is based on the experience, because I think if you go through enough things, you no longer are thinking every single time you have to prepare to have the right answer, but that you're going to trust your gut instinct. You've been through enough that you're going to come to a conclusion that's going to make sense. I think that also for me, like I feel more confident along the lines of what Mel said about being prepared to go into a meeting, but referencing other people and asking for advice, because I find a lot with my job, I don't know the answers, or it's not an area where I'm very expert in. And so the key to success, I think for me, is to research it, go to people who do it on a regular basis and not be afraid to ask. And trying to get help from other people has really been helpful to me. So once you live through it or you make the mistake, you do have that ability to rebound and come back in and say, I'm going to know better next time. I think preparation is key, as Mel said as well. And then also, I think, you know, really reaching out to people to not have to be the only one in the room that knows the answer, and to allow discussions to unfold while you're in a meeting, which I think when I was younger and newer at some of the event experiences, it was really difficult to be in groups of people and feel like you had to lead a discussion to a conclusion within that hour meeting or within one sitting, because you really had no one but yourself to rely on. So I think those are just the things where you gain experience over time, and people should give themselves some grace to get to that point where they feel more confident.
Giving grace is, I feel like, a motto that works across industries, because I think as women as well, we can be so tough on ourselves on the accomplishments that we're doing, on the work that we're doing. So taking a little bit of pause and patting ourselves on the back and saying, hey, take a breath. You're doing okay. I think that works. And let's get now to a question from Jessica Perez. She asks, was there a moment you can recall that told you sports is for me and I can make a great impact? Mel, I want to hear your answer on this one first.
I came to it later in life. So that's, definitely, I think was the case. After a long time in politics, I was definitely ready for something different. I'm not sure that there was a moment that sticks in my mind, although I will say that Super Bowl Sunday in 2012, which was 10 years ago, Saturday, which is hard to believe, was the most successful event I've ever worked on, and spent that much time working on. And so coming out of that, and they're not always successful, no matter, I've put in harder work maybe on other things that weren't as successful, but I came out of that and thought, like, I saw the power of sports to unite people, which doesn't often happen in politics, unfortunately. And I thought, this is something that I could make a career out of, that I really do enjoy. And I think coming out of COVID, it's only reinforced that, as we've all come back, hopefully a little bit stronger. I think that you realize how much people missed being together to cheer on their favorite teams and their favorite sports. So it's reinforced that. Yeah, I can't imagine going back. I can say that for sure.
Danita, do you have a standout moment? Is it the Super Bowl here in Indianapolis as well, or Indianapolis Colts being in the Super Bowl?
It was not quite that. Mine was actually, I started as an intern. I was working for the Fayetteville Patriots, which was part of the NBA G League at that time. And when I first started in sports, I was working, and I wanted to work in like community relations. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do like community work. My mom had worked in nonprofit work all her life, and it just kind of connected to me. And so I remember, I don't know if it was like one of my first school visits, but we did a school visit, and like we took our mascot out, and I think we like read to the kids or something that happened. And afterwards, the classroom sent me back like this glass apple, like the teachers get the apples, and they sent me a glass apple back, and it was like a thank you note with it. And I still have it to this day. I have like a keepsake box of like all my sports stuff. I have way too much stuff. I still have this apple. It's the first gift I ever got from like somebody in the community for the work we were doing in sports. And that was when I knew. I was like, so many people say they do jobs that are like thankless jobs, and to be in an industry where people are thankful for what we get to create, the memories, the connection with their communities, I was like, this is the place for me.
Passion work can do that for you, where it sticks out and you just realize this is where I need to be. Yeah. Susan, how about for you? Is there a sports moment, something that sticks out that said, hey, I need to do this thing?
Yeah, I think one thing that popped into my mind when you asked the question was when I was working at USA Gymnastics. It was my first Olympic trials. And so we had all kinds of just functional, like operational problems with electricity and just really basic things in the venue. So we were a little stressed out, but by the time that we got to the final day and the gymnastics team was being named to go to the Olympic Games and they stepped up on the podium, I just remember thinking to myself, like, this is a huge moment, right? It's not my moment at all, but to have been a part of setting that stage for these teams to be able to go on to the Olympic Games was like really amazing and emotionally overwhelming, because you kind of absorb the emotion from the team itself. So I think in that moment, that's where I really saw like sports doing good for those athletes and us more serving that behind the scenes purpose. And then I think that parlayed even greater along the lines of what Mel said, like what sports can do to leverage the attention of people. And so one of the things that has happened in Indianapolis time and again, and really exemplified through the Super Bowl, was people's interest in the actual football game and the Super Bowl to raise money to do things that were good for the community. And so when you've gone through a few of those experiences and you see how much you can use that interest in sports for the greater good, I feel like that's the tie that binds me to the sport itself. It's not any particular sport. It's just the idea of what it is and how you can move a community forward with the initiative. So those are a couple of great moments for me.
All great moments and memories there. Let's move into some more of the advice-based questions that we received from those who are watching with us now. Alexa Ross asked, what piece of advice would you give your younger self? Mel, how about you take that one first?
I can get off mute. I would jokingly answer this question once. I think for SBJ, I said enjoy your nights and weekends because the iPhone is coming. And when I first started, when I was younger, we didn't have those. We didn't have email when I first started working, which was fantastic. You know what? I think it would be, and it goes back to what you just echoed, which is give yourself grace. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to want to do more than you're maybe ready for at a young age. Don't be frustrated by that. You know, you've got plenty of time. You're going to have several careers. And so I think, and I talk to a lot of young people now who are 22 and 23, and they think their life is over if they're not in their dream industry already, or they are not already in their dream job. And when I think that until I was 30, I was actually someone's assistant, which I was proud of. I worked for a really, really smart people. I answered their phones and I made their appointments and I did their expense reports until I was 30. And at 37, I reported to the Vice President of the United States as his political director, right? I was not shot out of a cannon in my career. And so that's okay. I think, you know, be patient and show yourself some grace. And if you work hard, it does work out.
Danita, how about for you? What advice would you give to your younger self and maybe some of our younger viewers who are listening right now?
Yeah, I think keep reading and keep studying. It helps. It helps give you a sense of balance in a world that moves so fast. And the more, like, I'm a big believer in like reading, meditation, taking time for yourself, because if you do that, you can approach every situation better and don't let the little things get to you, right? Like that one conversation that goes wrong, like if you dwell on that forever and ever and you never let it go and you can't move past it, it's taken hold of you. And so in those moments, how do you evolve? So I think for my younger self, in those moments when I didn't know what quite to do, would be like, dive into the books, read about how you become stronger, read about like how different people move about, like learning about people even faster than I have, I think is such an important thing, and how we listen and get along with one another. So I think just for my younger self, it's like having that patience to just keep studying, use your resources around you.
Susan, would there be anything that sticks out right now that you would tell yourself 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
I think the idea that people are what carry you through all the years. And so to pay attention to what people are saying, even if you don't agree with what they're saying, like learn from people, keep an open mind towards others' opinions, others' values, realize there's, you know, more than one way to look at something. And your best solution is a lot of time going to be coming from a combined offering from different people. So I think that, and really growing relationships with people and valuing the differences between people and their experiences really comes in handy as time goes on. I think advice I actually was given and took to heart was don't be the person who only calls someone if you want something. Like, keep those relationships intact, not because you may want something later, but just because you can learn so much from people. And I think that was some of the best advice I've been given.
I want to follow up to Alexa's question here, because we're talking about advice you would give yourself and looking back on your own journeys. Has there been some sort of advancement in a say, or kind of just reasoning that you each have found about celebrating yourselves? Because we see a lot of women in these positions who are just trying to make it, who are trying to stand out, who are trying to prove I deserve to be here, and don't stop to take in the moments that are really big in their careers. So as you look back on yours, how did you celebrate yourself? I'll let Mel start first.
I would give myself an F on this one. I really haven't. Usually you're kind of plowing through the event or the position, and then you're going on to the next thing. And because of my background, having been events and political jobs, often I knew my last day on my first day, and that's never bothered me. I liked the variety, especially in my younger days. And so, sometimes my celebrating was moving across the country because you had to get to the next thing. But I agree. I do think that's important, and we're not always good at it. And I think some of the more driven people are probably the worst at it. But I think it's something we should be spending more time probably doing. Yeah, I celebrated my recent promotion by getting COVID over Christmas and cleaning out my house because I couldn't leave it. So that's, and it's the heart of the season. And so you can't really do that. You just don't have time to do those things sometimes, but I will maybe during the summer, but it's hard.
All right, we're going to hold you to that and follow back up in the summer and see how you celebrate.
That's fair.
All right, Susan, how about you?
I would say also bad at celebrating. I actually love that you brought this up because maybe this is a good point we need to make. People should take more time to appreciate what they've done and, bask in the glory a little bit. I think that probably the most celebration that I ever do is really through someone else. There's a lot of kind people out there who will, say kind words and thank you and be heartfelt about it. And I think that maybe many of us, including myself, need to internalize that a little bit more and be okay with it and be okay with celebrating your accomplishments instead of feeling uncomfortable in the light. I'm a little bit of a behind the scenes person. And so I think you raise a really great point, and maybe the celebration starts when we get off the call.
Danita, what about for you? And I am 100% with celebrating after the call and every day for you.
Before I took this job, I actually took a month off between this job and my last job. And that's the first time I've taken that much time off between jobs. I'm pretty much what Mel would do. I'd be like, I'd start, right, and go in. But I knew, and I had made a choice, and this is over time of working. I was like, I need a clear head to do what I'm about to do. And in order to do that, I need to take time for me. And so that I can show up as my best self for this team and for my staff. And so I took that time before I started this because I knew the intensity of the journey, right? And especially like as we're kind of coming out of COVID, launching a team back up, there was a lot to be done. So in that, I took time. And it's something I try to be really conscious of, because if I don't take time, whether it's like celebrating, and that was kind of my celebration, right? It was the time that I took for myself in that. If I don't do that, I can't be good for anybody else, right? If I don't take the trip, like I'm a big last minute trip person. Everybody knows you want to get on a flight. If I have the time, call me. Let's go let's celebrate whatever it is together, right? But like those are the things that I do that help me, because my time is precious and I celebrate by giving time back to myself in moments. And it's not necessarily like cheering it out to the world, but it's precious to me. And so we only get so much time in this world. So my celebration comes with me taking back my time to enjoy myself in whatever capacity in which I feel at that time.
Self-care, time management, such great tools of honoring yourself, celebrating yourself. And we'll talk about that self-care a little bit as well. But Danita, I have a question that's specific for you. The question is, what went into making your decision to move from a women's team with the LA Sparks and moving across the country now to a men's team with DC United?
It's a lot of layers that went into that decision, but I'm going to simplify it. There is these opportunities that come to you in your profession and in life that can truly be life-changing. And when I worked in the WNBA, it was life-changing for me as an individual and for those that we got to serve. But what that league taught me was to be a confident woman. It taught me to be a game changer. The work I'm doing now is a reflection of the women that I watched throughout my career in the WNBA. Like I get to go be one of them now. I get to kind of have like that superhero mentality a little bit to be like, how do I change the rest of this world? And I learned that from those women. and from my counterparts in the league. And so when it came to making this decision, there was these moments where I was like, am I turning my back on women? Like, what am I doing? Is this okay? Like, I've been fighting this fight. And then I was like, but this is a different kind of fight, right? Like, I'm now creating space and opportunity in a whole new world and a whole new landscape. And the challenge is that I'm sitting in one of our suites right now because we have our staff retreat going on, and I look out to the right and that's our field. And like, to oversee and help oversee a venue of this size, to have other properties and like the depth of that, and to just do things in a different kind of way at this level, I think it opens up multiple doors, not just for me, but for others. And I get to show up as myself each day. I don't have to be somebody that I'm not. And so those were the things I thought about, and how I continue to push forward what so many of us continue to fight for one another.
Somewhat on the same topic, because I want to bring in the two other ladies here. This question comes from Gia Peduto. Thank you, Gia. How do you make yourself stand out from everyone else? Danita just talked about being her true self and showing up so for you two, again, how do you make yourself stand out from everyone else and be authentic while doing so? I'll start with Mel.
I think for me, it's probably my work ethic and hard work. Like, a lot of this is, there's really not a shortcut to these jobs. I mean, the breadth of what we have to cover is, everything from, lately, COVID cases. We have a snowstorm coming where like you are in the newsroom there monitoring. We've got a game tonight and another one Friday, to, social media, to security issues, to construction, right? And in any given hour. And so I just think it's a lot of it is rolling up your sleeves, and for me, and being willing to do the work. And then the other thing is appreciating early on what I think my probably due to lack of confidence, my shortcomings were. I changed my college major because I didn't want to take public speaking in college. That was probably really stupid. And I hated it. And I hated being on TV. And I hated all those things, and I have to do them every week now. And you just have to get over that, and you have to get better at it if you want to grow, because you're not going to be in these positions if you can't do that. You're just not. And those are basic skill sets, just like accounting, just, all those, the ability to read a spreadsheet, all those things are important. And so, I think it's understanding where those were, and then addressing them and getting better at them is, for me, like, that's kind of been it.
So for Mel, big takeaway that we heard was work ethic. Susan, for you, what is it you think you do that makes you stand out?
I guess just embracing like my actual personality, which is a little goofy and a little bit silly. And I know that that's not always like, you've got to go into the meeting and you got to be serious and you got to get the business done. But if I had to be serious all the time, like, I would feel very constrained. And so for me, it's just trying to walk the line between doing the business, but having fun while we're doing it. I do enjoy my job. I like working with people. And so I guess I would say, I don't know if it is always a standout for someone else, but it's something that I think is important to me to get through the weeks and the months in a happy way, is to try to embrace like my actual character and try to bring that into the workplace. I like to think that I'm a really loyal person, and I am very committed to anything that I do. And so within that, I still want to shape it and have an atmosphere around me that's lively, that people want to come to work, that people like being together. And that, I said this to somebody the other day, work is not punishment. Work is like what we do. And if you like your work and you get satisfaction out of it, it's like actually a great thing. Like, I don't want to have a job or a feeling in my workplace where people don't want to be there every day. I want it to feel like you're missing out if you don't come. And so trying to bring a little bit of that spirit, I think maybe is something that's different about me than the next guy.
I think all coworkers could agree. We look for that person, right, who makes you want to come into work, who invigorates you and re-energizes you to do the work that you're doing. So Susan, thank you for being that person. We have the perfect follow-up here. It's coming from Kelly Hertlinder. She asks, what is the best way to make a sports resume stand out? Let me start with Danita.
A couple different things. I think one, it depends on like what area of the business you want to work in. Because I always say to folks, like, we are like even though we're sports, there are traditional elements to our business as far as departments. I think one of the things I always look for in folks is opportunities, not necessarily leadership, because some people don't necessarily want to be in leadership. Some people want to be a part of a team. So understand that that's okay. You don't have to want to lead an organization or something of that nature. You can still be a role player. And so I think in a resume, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to understand what type of role player you are. Do you want to be the one that leads the team? Do you want to be a contributor to the team, right? And like looking at like past organizations you've been involved in, what type of work you've done. I also look for in resumes like actionables. And what I mean by that, I hope I'm saying the right word here, is like, give me a story of what you actually did. Right. So sometimes it's just like a bullet point of the result, but I like those little briefings that actually give you a little bit more of like how you got to that result. Like what did you contribute to the overall project that led to the final result? So those are things that I'm always looking for in resumes that I feel like kind of bring things to life for me, because it intrigues me more to then want to have further dialogue with you.
Susan, how about for you? What would stick out on a resume that makes you think, hey, this person should be a part of our company?
Yeah, I think especially for people looking to get into the sports industry or that entry level area, their willingness to volunteer, whether that's at college, at church, with sports leagues, whatever those opportunities are, those really differentiate people for me, because I think if they're willing to do it as a volunteer and unpaid, then they're likely to stick with it if they are paid through their job. I also think bringing a niche or a special expertise to your resume. So if you're looking at several people applying for the same job, and there's some little thing that you've done in your past, whether that's a planning component, or maybe it is a finance component, or a database or IT slant that you may have. I think bringing something like that in is important, because as we build out a team, especially if you have a smaller staff, you're always looking for people to cover extra areas. We never have enough people to do everything. So that little expertise, I think, would set a person apart.
Mel, anything that you would see that says, hey, this is the person, they have to be hired?
Yeah, I think it's super job specific what I'm looking for, but I think to what Danita was saying, don't put down like I worked for the world champion Golden State Warriors and helped with $1 billion in sponsorship. So what did you really do for that team? And specifically, what was your role? And it might have been something very small and specific, but very impactful to the role. I think that's, to me, I'm looking for that. And then the other thing is, we were just interviewing someone recently for a position here. We're small, most of us are small family businesses in the professional team ranks. And and I'm looking for someone who can do the job you're hiring for, but other things as well. Some of us are jack of all trades. And so, if you're coming from Eli Lilly here locally, that's a fantastic company. We could not be more opposite. Like there's not a 3-ring binder for everything we do here. You don't fill out a form in triplicate. We're fast moving and it can be rather chaotic. And so just understanding our corporate culture, does that fit, what you want to do? Because if you come from these big process oriented companies, this would be shocking to you.
I'm going to ask everyone who's watching and listening now, if you're only listening, pop by and look at your screen, because I have a question I want to see the ladies raise their hands. How often has the question, how do you balance life, personal, and work? Raise your hand if you at any point in your career as a woman in sports have heard the question about balance. All right, so if you were not watching, all 3 ladies raised their hand. Do you take issue with that question, and do you even have a response for that question? Sidebar, have you seen your male colleagues get that question? Let me start first with Susan.
Well, I think I maybe struggle with work-life balance myself. I guess though, for me, I peel it back to, I'm not offended by the question. I guess in my own mind, I shape it a little differently, because as I said before, I feel like work isn't like separate from my life goals. Like I feel like it's a part of my overall life. And so I personally am okay with blurring that line. I'm also single. I don't have kids. I do help take care of elderly relatives. So I understand it's different for everybody what time you have to carve out because there's different functions in people's lives that they have to do. But I think it depends on the individual to decide what balance means to them. And so for me, the most important thing is to not miss those really special occasions or miss those things that I prioritize as important outside of work. But I find joy within the work as well. And I'm lucky that I work with people that I like to be around. So I don't feel like I've cut off my social life or that celebration part of life where you're doing things with people you enjoy because I'm at work. As it relates to the question is whether that is a question that gets asked to men, I would say years back, probably never, right? Probably never asked of men. In recent times and with younger generation, I feel like it's a much bigger topic that's more widespread. So I would say I've seen that more, and it's more generational than gender at this point.
Danita, how about for you? I saw you nodding your head. Similar experience?
Yeah, I agree. I think it doesn't offend me. I think people ask that more of they're trying to figure it out themselves. So they look and see, like, one of my friends was like, "Are you even human some days?" she was like, "Dear," she's like, "How do you?" Because people they see us moving, they see us doing, and so I think for me, when I get asked that question, it's more of like, "How are you doing?" in doing it versus because I'm a woman and things of that nature. I don't have children either yet, so I don't know. Like that's kind of where I take it, and I think it's more of like I typically take that as a question of one in which people are looking for advice because they're trying to figure it out themselves.
Mel, how about you?
Yeah, same. I'm trying to figure it out. So I probably ask it sometimes too. And I think, it is a struggle. My team, probably 2 or 3 years ago, we had done, I'd gotten feedback from my team that I'm like that terrible at disconnecting. And then they feel like they can't go on vacation and disconnect because I'm responding to emails the whole time I'm gone. Totally valid. I get it. And I have tried to be better since then. And then I have asked them to understand that I will do that. But if you send me 20 emails a day while I'm gone, I can't unplug, so it's got to be a two-way street. I try to respect, when my team is off, and encourage them to take off, especially at times when we can, because we do have we always have a team in that's going all year round, but certainly there's ebbs and flows to that. And so, it is hard right now to take a week off of work just because we're in the heart of the season. But in July, I want people to try to unplug. And so I think you've got to try to practice what you preach a little bit. And but I don't know anymore with this toy if we'll ever really be totally disconnected, unfortunately.
I have something to add to that, Mel. I have like a rule of our office that I started when I first came here, and I was like, no late night emails. So unless it's an absolute emergency, we don't send late night emails. So and I knew it started to work when somebody sent me an email at 7:00 and was like, "Sorry, this is so late." And I was like, "Oh, they're getting it." But that was a rule that I have for my team because I'm like, is it something that we can actually address at that hour? And if it's not something that is actually addressable during that time, then do we really need to send the note about it so somebody has to think about it all night to wake up in the morning to deal with it, where in the morning they can actually just get the email and deal with it then, is one of the things that I started with my team. And like every once in a while we'll send notes, but usually we're like very conscious about what it is, or like it's like this has to be done in that moment. But that's something that we're particular about, and I really try to encourage the delay send.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I wish I could say I practice that, but I do try to, if I catch up on a Sunday, I try to save them and don't send anything till Monday because I'm not going to ruin somebody's Sunday because I decided to work.
Yeah, and they think about it all day, right? And like that's auto send is beautiful. It's a beautiful delay thing. And like even for us, when I work on weekends, I do it. Like I'll sit up if I'm up late one night at 2 and auto send it all for in the morning at 9, and people can deal with it then. But it's something I try to work on.
Yeah, save as draft. Yeah, I think Beairshelle got dropped,
Yes.
so I'm going to try to pick up. I've always wanted to be Oprah on one of these, and I
Oh.
never get to. Yeah, I think we've got some questions that have come in the chat, so I'll go ahead and ask you guys. Danita, what's the biggest challenge you've had in your career?
I think the biggest challenge is, my own self-doubt that would get in the way of me doing things.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's actually just getting past myself, because you can get past other people, you can work hard for other things, but like the mental capacity to be like, you are able, and to teach myself that I'm able. And I think I talked about it earlier, like how that comes over time, where we talked about confidence. But I think for me, that's the biggest challenge, was making me understand that I could do it.
Yeah.
And even in this last year, like probably like 6 months ago, I didn't even feel as confident as I've felt over the years, because I was like, this is hard. And so we're finally in a really good place. There'll be more challenges, but definitely, I think that's one of my biggest things.
Yeah. While I'm thinking about it, I'll throw one more out. What's the coolest thing you've gotten to do in sports? We get to do some cool things for sure. So what's the coolest?
All-stars and championship wins, hands down. Yeah, I've been part of 3 championships, so that's definitely.
That's awesome. I wasn't here for 2012, and we went to game 5 of the finals in 15, my first season with the Fever. And sadly, we didn't win that. We didn't win game 5. So, but I feel confident Tamika is putting together a team that's going to be there again soon. Susan, same question for you. Biggest challenge in your career?
I think just over time, trying to not micromanage things, because it goes back to the preparation that you were talking about. You want to be so ready to move through certain meetings or decisions, for me to learn to back off of it a little bit and let other people's ideas bubble up, and to be able to deal with those like real time and allow there to be more than one answer to a problem. So just sort of fighting my own urge to make sure everything's buttoned up, or that maybe the conversation doesn't stray too far. So work in progress. I wouldn't say I always have it, but realizing how important it is to hear everybody else's opinion as well.
Our moderator's back, thank God.
I am.
Wonderful.
You did well.
Just as you were talking about iPhones and being unable to disconnect, my laptop decided to disconnect. So as luck would have it, I thought, oh my God, the storm is starting and we don't have power. But so we have just under 10 minutes here before we wrap things up. And I think you may have been taking some questions from the chat. So if you're watching right now and you weren't able to send a question prior, please feel free. Now is the time where you can type that in, and we'll make sure that the ladies get it. But in the meantime, let me get to one other question that we have here. It is from Jasmine Nero. She asked, what route did you take in getting your first sports industry job? Which I think some of you touched on a little bit here, but to get more to Jasmine's question, I'll start with Susan, if you could give her an answer.
Yeah, well, when I was first looking for a job out of college, I was not looking for a sports job. I was actually looking for something in the journalism, editing, that kind of capacity. And so I had done a lot of interviews, not really anything seeming like it was a great fit. And so my counselor from college sent me a couple of opportunities that were sports internships. And I hadn't gone to school for that, and I didn't have that degree. And so I was like, well, why not? The other ones haven't been a perfect fit. I'll just go talk to these people. I got offered both of them, and I ended up taking one of them. And so while I was looking for a full-time paying job, I took an internship. And so I think there's maybe a little grain of lesson there, in terms of it's okay to start at the very beginning, at the very entry level, to figure out if you like something or not. And I love that internship, and that's why I stayed in sports, even though that wasn't my degreed area. So that was my start.
Danita, how about for you? What was your start?
Mine was via internship as well. So for me, my last semester in college, we actually had to do like a full-time internship. So I ended up taking an internship with the NBA G League, and that's why I was working for the Fayetteville Patriots. So that's actually how I started. It was due to my class assignment. And I knew it was the industry I wanted to work in. It's what I went to school for. I didn't know how it was all going to play out. There was days I was like, I'm gonna be an athletic director. There were days I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do in sports, but I'm gonna figure it out. Worked out well. So.
Mel, was internship your path as well?
No, I mean, I came in later in my career. So, but I will say that, I came in sort of at a lateral from where I had been in my political positions to maybe even slightly lower than where I had been in politics. And I was willing to do that because it was a new industry and and it has all worked out. But I think you've got to sometimes to move around, you've got to be willing to take maybe a step back, to take a couple steps forward. And that's what worked for me.
We got a question here in the chat from one of our, looks like from Indiana Fever. Yes. So she works with the Indiana Fever and she asked, how do you overcome imposter syndrome? I'll start with Mel on that because you just talked about a transition from politics into sports. I can imagine that was a time where you're questioning yourself. Am I good enough? So how do you overcome that?
Yeah, for sure. You dive in, ask a ton of questions. I've never been afraid to ask questions. And I think you have to be willing to do that to get educated on things and both inside and outside the industry you're going in. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I fight it. I mean, you're in a position, leadership position with a lot of people looking to you for direction in a time where the world moves really quickly. And so I think that's hard not to feel sometimes, but then you have to remember you were given this position for a reason. People have faith in you and you need to lead confidently. And so, I try to overcome those feelings by remembering why I'm here and a wealth of experience. And I've got support all around me and good people above me and on the sides of me and on my team. And so, that's how I overcome it.
Danita, how about you? Imposter syndrome, have you ever dealt with that?
Absolutely, still do. It creeps up on you every once in a while. I think, you know what, it's really kind of my outside support system that helps me. Like when I can talk to people like my friends in my circle, my mentors, people around the industry, and I'm just like, I just don't feel comfortable. I feel odd in this space, right? And so I lean on them because sometimes you just need somebody to help build you back up in those moments. And that's kind of how I've been able to get through those moments where you feel like you don't belong. And the other thing is I'm always big about small wins, right? What did I do in the room right? Where did I feel confident at? And how do I continue to come back into that room and add a little bit more that next time? Helps me kind of work through it.
How about you, Susan? Lastly, is there anything that you use, any tools to overcome imposter syndrome? And I see our chat is going up, but we're running out of time. So I promise I'll give you a way to connect with these ladies. But let me let Susan ask that first and let you all know that we're going to close that chat for questions now.
Yeah, I think from a very tactical standpoint, it would be helpful when you're feeling like that to really assess yourself, take stock of some of the projects maybe you'd most recently done, and not just sit in the feeling of I'm not good enough to do this or I'm in the wrong space, but to really say, okay, what have I done well? And if you think you haven't done something well, really dig into that and be like, well, why am I feeling that way? Was it because I wasn't prepared? Did I not do my research? Was I treated unfairly? Was I not ready for what I was headed into? So I think really analyzing like what's making you feel that way. And then additionally, just like Mel and Danita were saying, I think relying on other people to do a little assessment, go to someone else that you admire and trust in your workplace or in your friend circle and say, look, I'm feeling this way. Are you feeling that I'm competently doing my job? Can we talk about things I can improve on? I think if you're concrete about it, we all have things to improve on. And so if you really make 3 bullet points and say, I'm going to work on this in the next month or the next 6 months, you can alleviate your own fear because you feel like you're battling the problems that you maybe have within certain situations.
Well, ladies, I feel like we could go for another hour. I have an hour's worth of questions here from some of the people submitted as well as our chat. So I apologize to all of you who just submitted questions, but we're going to wrap up here. But here's the great thing. I'm going to ask each of you ladies, what is the best way for someone watching right now to connect with you if they do have a question that they were unable to get answered here today? Let me start with Danita.
Definitely LinkedIn's probably the best. I've been a little slower because we're getting ready to start our season. But usually like every month or two, I go in and try to answer all LinkedIn messages that I get, and I'll set up individual calls with folks like bi-monthly and do 15-minute calls, sometimes longer because we just get into it, but that's probably the best way.
Mel?
Yeah, LinkedIn, I do something similar. I'll kind of go on occasionally, or Mel Reigns at pacers.com, and I'll answer as soon as I can. And we get a little inundated, but I do try to get back to people. And I understand I've been in the shoes of people trying to reach people like me, and how important it is to touch base.
Last but not least, Susan, how can people connect with you?
Sure, I think LinkedIn's probably the easiest way to go. So, and we appreciate everyone trying to get advice. It is hard to find someone to talk to, so appreciate the questions.
All right, so everyone listening, LinkedIn is the way to connect with all three of these ladies. Thank you each so much for uplifting us as women and the work that you do and taking the time here today to answer so many questions. I'm going to send things over now to Allison. With that, we're going to wrap up. So Allison, any final words?
I think we might have lost Allison in the storm.
Right.
So I'll pick up for her and say, we are grateful for you taking time in the middle of the day, Danita and Susan and Beairshelle, to help us and have this discussion, how important this day is for a girl who played sports myself. I think we all did, probably, in our development to get to where we are today. And thanks to everybody who dialed in. So hope everybody in Indiana gets home safely later today and enjoys the snow tomorrow.
All right, Mel, thank you. And if you're watching as well, I hope that you support. Please stay safe. We'll be on from 4 until forever, probably. So I'll be on with an hour. We're talking about that forecast and making sure you and your family stay safe. So thank you, guys. Continue to celebrate yourselves, uplift yourselves, and take up space. Have a great day.